Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And if you want to stay up to date with all things clown decade, please do subscribe to the channel and of course become a member. Also to all you Reform members out there, please don't forget to of course vote in the board elections. It's good to have member representation of course on the board, and there's plenty of good talent there, so don't forget to vote. Anyway, on to frankly much more important matters. I have to say I've been nothing short of impressed of the British people who have in dozens of towns and villages and even cities across the United Kingdom have come out against the ridiculous idea to, well, frankly just not deport the asylum seekers, quote unquote, the illegal migrants, who end up in hotels in their area and in a lot of areas are causing more and more issues. What I'm most impressed at is that usually these are the sorts of protests where you have a bit of a flashpoint, it maybe lasts 2-3 days, something like that, and everyone just goes back to normal life. But no, I've been talking about these events now, the protests specifically, for probably about a month, and they are still going, and it's this type of persistence that gets you results. A lot of people say, oh, protests don't work. That's nonsense. Protests work if the protests carry on for months on end. Look at Just Stop Oil, look at Extinction Rebellion, they got basically what they wanted. Why? Because they went on about it for years. Anyway, there was more news from Epping as man staying at a hotel that he's been the focus of protest denies sexual assault charges. Mohammed Shawak, a 32-year-old Syrian national, has also denied 2 counts of common assault and 4 counts of assault by beating, which of course these are just allegations, but they're pretty damning if there are multiple counts of it. You'd think one of them would stick. And this is a completely separate person to the first Ethiopian asylum seeker, quote unquote, who was found to be sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl by trying to kiss her, presumably at a nearby school, but I don't think that's actually ever been confirmed. And obviously this was a big reason for the protests, and now it turns out you've got 2 people that are being done for sexual assault. The second one has multiple charges pressed against him for beating as well. It's really looking like the protesters are vindicated, which I always thought they were. So, Shawak, who is alleged to have kissed a man on the neck, okay, a bit weird, indicated a plea of not guilty to a charge of sexual assault at Chelmsford Magistrates Court today. He indicated guilty pleas to 6 further charges concerning 4 complaints, with 2 counts of common assault and 4 assault by beating. Oh, so he is guilty of them, that's not actually alleged. He is quite a wrong-un in the way that he is violent, and could be a wrong-un as it's going to trial, in terms of being a bit of a sexual deviant. Shawak is alleged to have punched a man in the face, indicated guilty pleas, may not have actually put them in yet, so I guess these still are alleged. So he is alleged to have punched a man in the face, thrown an object at a man, slapped a 3rd man in the face, and attempted to punch a 4th. What the hell was going on? I'm not being funny, obviously I've been out in big cities before, I've seen a couple of fights. I don't think I've seen anyone who I would have thought would get into multiple like that. Obviously there are people out there like that, but it still takes a hell of a mind to come over to a country illegally and then basically start trying to beat up 4 men in your surrounding area that you don't know. Sky News understands that the alleged offences took place inside the hotel between 25 July and 12 August. District Judge Lynette Woodrow remanded Shawak, who was assisted in court by an Arabic interpreter, in custody until trial on 30 September. Well, hopefully he'll be deported, because it looks like Labour are indicating that they are looking to deport foreign criminals, which is a no-brainer, and which once again is thanks to Reform pushing that very policy. The arrest followed weeks of protest outside the hotel. Neil Hudson, the Tory MP for Epping Forest, said last month that the protests were a crisis that risks boiling over. Well, everyone's saying that. Anyway, as I say, we'll get on to the point of this video, which is that the protests work. Council applies for injunction over asylum hotel. So after weeks of feeling like nothing is getting done, well, the council have had their hand forced, because at the end of the day, they have to try and pacify these protests, which, as everyone keeps saying, could boil over into either civil unrest or civil war, as the people begging for attention keep saying. So a district council has applied for an interim High Court injunction to stop migrants being housed in a hotel. Hundreds of people have demonstrated outside the Bell Hotel in Epping, Essex, in recent months, protesting against it being used as to house asylum seekers, illegal migrants, BBC, come on. Epping Forest District Council said that there was a clear risk of further escalation of community tensions. Its Conservative leader, Chris Whitbread, said, "We should not have to take this fight to the High Court, but we are left with no choice. It is now up to the judge." He pointed to the unprecedented levels of protest and disruption witnessed near the hotel since last month. The Home Office said it would be inappropriate to comment while legal proceedings are ongoing, which is fair enough, but I think it's fair to be clear about what type of protests I'm talking about here. When the violence happened, obviously, I was very much against all that, because I'm rather on the school of Extinction Rebellion. Being violent doesn't particularly get you anywhere and can delegitimise you quite quickly. The reason that this has worked is, as I showed in the thumbnail, most of the protests are about 50-50, probably leaning more towards more women being there. And if women are at these protests and make the majority demographic of the protests, people tend to take it more legitimately, because if it's a bunch of men, and especially if, and I have seen this, a lot of men have cans of beer with them, it looks like an excuse to have a bit of a punch-up. When it's women, it's, rather hard to argue that, and looks a hell of a lot more serious. And, well, we're seeing results of that. Keep that persistently, you get results. Extinction Rebellion managed it with net zero madness. We're managing it here in Epping by the council taking it a hell of a lot more seriously, and now trying to get rid of the illegal migrants. So, well done to everyone who did go along to the protest and was not violent. So the council lodged the application earlier and asked that it take effect within 14 days in event it is granted. It is also seeking a declaration that the use of the hotel for the purposes of accommodating asylum seekers is not akin to a hotel and therefore not permitted under planning rules. In other words, I think the reason for their injunction is a bit of, legal mumbo-jumbo, let's say, to say, because this isn't being used as a hotel, it's breaking its planning rules and therefore it shouldn't be allowed anyway. Which, if that goes through, that kind of ruins the whole plan for the government. Where do you put these people then? Just deport them. A spokesperson for the local authority said, as far as it was aware, there was no criminal record checking for individuals housed there, and there were 5 schools and residential care homes within the vicinity. 5 schools. I know there's one within half a mile of the hotel, but I wonder how big that radius is. But with a town like Epping, I'm not surprised there's a lot of schools and care homes in the area. The current situation cannot go on. If the Bell Hotel was a nightclub, we could have closed it down long ago, said the spokesperson. The use of the Home Office of the premises for asylum seekers poses a clear risk of further escalating community tensions already at a high, and the risk of irreparable harm to the local community. The recent rounds of protests followed the arrest of a resident at the hotel, subsequently charged with sexual assault, harassment and inciting a girl to engage in sexual activity. And then obviously there was the second guy who assaulted about 6 people and then tried to kiss a man on the neck. Allegedly. Anyway, despite all this, The Guardian threw out an analysis saying how violent protests in Epping are being fuelled by disinformation. Which I'm sure there is still violence going on in Epping, but I've not seen anything close to the first night in Epping, which did have quite a few clips and photos of people being violent, but I've not seen anything like it since. But anyway. Claims Essex Police Force bust in anti-racism activists have been denied, but have spread on social media and right-wing news channels. And what's particularly funny about this is that this article was published on the 24th of July. This was the day after that police conference, where the Chief Commissioner over in Essex Police basically had to come out and say, yes, we did bust them over. No, I'm not going to comment on any of that. And so obviously the Guardian comes out to be an establishment shill because the press conference wasn't good enough. But anyway, we'll see what this analysis said. Enjoying beers in the afternoon sunshine on Epping High Street, the 3 local men were adamant about recent events in the town. Not only had Essex Police used their own vans to bus in anti-racism counter-demonstrators last week into Epping, said one of the men, but masked undercover police officers had been among the lefties. Okay, that one's probably a bit of misinformation, I'll give you that. Can't exactly deny the first part though, and anyway, the whole point of the protest is about the illegal migrants in the hotel anyway, some of whom are quite clearly wrong-uns. They were masked up and looked like foot soldiers. Anyone who works in security will also pick up on how they were standing. If you looked, you could see that they held their hands together to give a discreet thumbs-up sign, said the man, reluctant, like so many other local people, to go on the record, but who gave his name as Steve Davis. So, he's on the record. The only problem with this analysis was it appeared to be entirely wrong. Essex police have categorically denied it busting anti-racism protesters. The suggestion of state-sponsored false flag provocateurs, a frequent trope advanced on niche corners of social media at times of tension on the streets, were also dismissed. What's very strange about this claim by The Guardian is that 2 days earlier, as reported by GB News, Essex police officers were spotted shepherding the pro-migrant protesters on foot and in vans to the hotel in Epping at the heart of this week's unrest, and the force at first denied escorting the demonstrators to the hotel, but have now U-turned to claim it was the officers' duty to do so. And the backtrack came after the police were showing footage of themselves walking alongside activists, some of whom were masked, as they chanted and marched through the streets, and I've covered that on this channel before. But The Guardian out here trying to, well, be on the side of the police who, well, at first denied it and then didn't deny it, but I guess they didn't get the memo. How they didn't get the memo in 2 days, I have no idea. But it just shows how, I mean, it's always relatively decentralised, the network between the political journalists and the journalists. But they did not have a official line on this, really. Obviously, they all tried to deny it. You can't really deny it because of the way social media works now. And so they effectively just said, oh, well, it's the law, so it's above us. But obviously, when everyone's giving you a different story, that's just going to make people even less trustful of you, and that's already dangerously low. Anyway, The Guardian go on to say online misinformation and disinformation originating in niche corners of X have been amplified. No, a lot of this actually comes from live streams on TikTok and YouTube. It was then just clipped and put on X. Again, the old media have no idea what to actually do about this, because what The Guardian actually ended up doing was saying, right, we're getting off X because of Elon Musk and we're all going to Blue Sky. And they just have a complete echo chamber where they tell themselves these stories. This isn't what happened. I know this isn't what happened. My lovely girlfriend was getting clips together for me to show me what was going on and so I could use it in a video while I was monitoring other websites. We had a whole system going that day. It was great. Seemingly without attempt to corroborate whether it is true by politicians such as Farage and commentators from GB News Channel. Again, trying to throw all these in the same lasso and basically discredit them. But ultimately, the only people who take The Guardian seriously are effectively foreign centre-left and left-wing establishments. Even the modern-day left-wing in Britain doesn't take them particularly seriously because they're either too right-wing for the full-on communists or they're too cringe for people like Keir Starmer, who is effectively trying to play up to GB News these days to obviously get the Farage vote. It's not working. Video clips of stand-up to racism protesters being taken out of Epping last Thursday in police vans after they were surrounded by groups of men who threw projectiles at them, and the police were quickly repurposed on social media and presented as if they were images of protesters being transported from Epping station. No, it was very clear that they were being taken away in the police vans. You also had them being escorted to there. You're not talking about that, though, because all you can do is talk about complete wrong nonsense misinformation, if you will, on Blue Sky. In fact, as Essex police have confirmed, the stand-up to racism protesters had made their way on foot from the station earlier in the day, while police escorted them on foot to enable them to exercise a right to protest. Incredible. So the claims, if they weren't... The claims earlier in the article of, oh, well, people are saying that the police escorted them there, that's not true. In the very same article, The Guardian now saying, oh yeah, that was actually true. It doesn't matter if the police took them there in a van and walked them away or walked them there and drove them away. It doesn't matter which way round it is at all. The point is that the police escorted them to the damn place and then away from it. And obviously, at first they tried to deny it, despite the fact you're trying to cover for that lie and are literally writing the evidence against that. And then on top of that, you have the gall to say that people on X are lying when you're frankly lying about the fact that people were put in to the vans to be driven away. Nobody tried to claim they were taken there in vans. I never saw that at all. Why would they be shoving them in the vans at the site of the protest if they were being taken to the protest in the vans? That's clearly showing they're being taken away in the vans. This is the problem with an awful lot of left-wingers, and especially The Guardian. They are in the mindset of, we're just right all the time, completely ignore the right wing, they have nothing good to say, and it's put them in the worse position on misinformation than they were in 2016. Back when they had basically every mainstream social media channel, they were pretty bad. But now they've gone to Blue Sky effectively to echo chamber themselves into obscurity. They can't even get a coherent story together when they are trying to defend the establishment, defend these police chiefs that have had to U-turn about 3 times, and they can't even get their facts right. They keep mixing things up. It's just incredible to witness. Also worth pointing out at this point that while I have noticed in the opinion section there isn't much that they have to say about Farage, I think it's because he's winning and they just don't want to talk about him in their echo chambers. When it comes to actually having to deal with reality a bit, like this article, once again, they do have a go at Farage. So anyone trying to tell me that they're not having a go at Farage, one, they are, but two, if you're trying to say they're not having a go at Farage because he's on their side, yeah, you're just wrong. But even then, now that they are having a go at Farage, you'll say, oh, it's cover because he's on their side. Because people like that have absolutely no theory of the brain. Anyway, the rest of the article tries to focus on misinformation spread around by people like Farage about being bussed in, and we've literally just read a paragraph about them being escorted in, as if there's any meaningful difference there. Basically, the Guardian are having a go at semantics. That's how pathetic they've got. Anyway, it's time to move over to Canary Wharf, where, well, with recent news, I think things are going to heat up over this weekend. As videoed here by a randomer near Canary Wharf, they're recording this man who is put up in the Canary Wharf Hotel, the Britannia International, and was accused by a member of the public of trespassing in her flat. And obviously this ended up getting the police involved, and, well, we'll go through that clip.
This man in this vehicle has just entered a lady's property without her consent, and these officers have said it's not an offence. They're letting him go. They're letting him go. Officer, how is that not an offence?
Yeah, effectively, goodness knows why. After being accused and no doubt witnessed by multiple people, the guy entering a flat that he had no right to be in, the officers aren't pressing charges from the looks of it. They're just, well, probably giving him a verbal warning, if that, and letting him go. Naturally, people in the area are once again incredibly irritated at this, because once again, it feels like two-tier policing. They're all there effectively to stop people getting anywhere near the hotel who are protesting it, okay, fair enough, but then when one of the protesters actually goes into a place they have no right to be in, I mean, to be fair, they're already in the country with no right, then, yeah, nothing happens to them. And that's on 2 counts if you technically count the fact that you shouldn't be in the country.
Do you think it's not an offence entering a property? Regardless, if I entered your house with your wife and kids in there, are you going to be angry and want to get me arrested?
Be angry, but you have to prove intent for it to be burglary.
So this ultimately is where the police are doing a very, very bad job. The police officers are effectively trying to justify releasing this man who entered a woman's property completely uninvited, because while trespass is, I think, technically a civil matter, for it to be criminal you have to prove intent. At the end of the day, what other intent is there to, well, I assume he broke in. I'm not sure if he broke in or if he just walked through a door that wasn't locked properly, something like that. Still, the intent of doing either of those things, or the fact that he did either of those things, is enough to be suspicious of intent, which is enough to arrest and investigate. But they're not bothering with that. I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because they know that would get in the news and then you'd hear, oh, you know, a man went into a 22-year-old woman's flat who was an asylum seeker, and then you end up getting riots. Maybe that's their issue. The problem is that somehow they still don't understand that this stuff just makes a Streisand effect. And because of that, obviously, the police had to end up making a statement on it. So, statement regarding videos circulating online relating to, well, the incident we just watched. We are aware of videos circulating online relating to an instance that officers were called to at 18:07 hours on Wednesday, 13 August at Marshwell E14. We understand a man entered a property through an open door, there you go, having been followed by a group of men in the street. The man had not been arrested at the time, as our initial investigation had not identified any offences, aside from trespass. We understand this is distressing for the occupant, or occupants. In a separate incident following this, a 22-year-old woman was arrested on suspicion of common assault against a security guard, possession of an offensive weapon, affray, possession of Class B drugs, which was cannabis, and assault on an emergency worker. This, by the way, was the occupant of the flat. This is confirmed by BBC News, who go through all the charges and says that she is the occupant of the flat. Now, I am not defending any of her alleged crimes here, but what I am doing is saying that I completely understand her distress to the point where she felt like she needed to arm herself after all a complete stranger entered her home, completely uninvited, she didn't know who it was, and obviously that's going to set off her danger alarms of, oh my god, a lot of people in the hotel are probably going to be like that. That's just a natural reaction to all this. Bear in mind, actually, let's get a picture of what he looked like when he was being arrested. I mean, I've seen an awful lot of people compare this face to the classic mugshot of the Southport killer, and it's only because he looks exactly like him, same face and all, we just can't see the crazy hair because of the hood. That comes in to your home, what are you going to associate it with? The murder of 3 little girls. No wonder she was in a panic, and she went out with an offensive weapon. I'm not saying she shouldn't have been arrested for this necessarily, these are the laws of the land after all, but my god, it's understandable, she probably forgot she had cannabis on her as well. But it is just the state of modern Britain where a guy who looks like that, looks like he's up to no good, and understandably makes a woman panic because he went into her home, is let free because, oh, there's no way to tell what his intent was. You can't tell what his intent was. He just went into a woman's home, but might have been completely innocent. But then they come and arrest the woman, who understandably wanted something done about this and understandably was very distressed about this hotel where this man came from. At the very least, arrest both. A Section 35 dispersal order was put in place in the vicinity of the area, and a 28-year-old man and 57-year-old woman are arrested for breaching the order. This is a complex set of events, and we are working to investigate and understand what happened and reviewing officers' body-worn video and any other footage. If you saw what happened, get in contact. Well, people obviously were not particularly happy with this, and so they made a second statement. So this is the Met update from this morning. A man has been arrested and a woman has been charged as part of an ongoing investigation into incidents that took place on the Isle of Dogs on Wednesday evening. The man remains in custody and the woman appears at court later this morning. So on Wednesday night, we released an initial statement following an incident on the Isle of Dogs where a man allegedly entered a woman's flat. He was detained by members of the public nearby. Good bunch of lads. Our investigation continued on Thursday with officers carrying out extensive CCTV inquiries and speaking to witnesses. As a result of this, in the early hours of this morning, we arrested a man in the Hackney area on suspicion of common assault. He is believed to be in his early 20s, and we can confirm that this man was the one who allegedly entered the flat, and he is now in police custody. Well, it's like reform are right. If someone's committing small-scale crimes, they'll commit lots of small-scale crimes and move up in the type of crime that they do. Nuts. A 22-year-old woman who was arrested on Wednesday evening has since been charged with a number of offences, and we can confirm she is an occupant of the flat that was entered. Jenny Augustus, 22, of Bying Street, Tower Hamlets. Oh god, I just saw the year she was born, 2002, that makes me feel old. But she has been charged with possession of an offensive weapon, affray, assault on an emergency worker, common assault and possession of cannabis. Charges of affray and common assault relate to an altercation at the Britannia Hotel in Marsh Wall later on Wednesday evening. The alleged victim of the common assault is a security guard at the hotel, not the man who allegedly entered her flat, because, as I say, she was probably going a bit mad with the whole situation, and as I say, I wouldn't say that's entirely misunderstandable. So, there you go. Anyway, she was remanded in custody and will appear later at Thames Magistrate Court this morning, which, honestly, I think she should plead a case of extenuating circumstances. The guy who entered her flat, she didn't know what was going to do. It's hard to say what was happening in that flat. The assault's wrong, obviously. The offensive weapon, wrong. I mean, pretty much everything she did's wrong. However, is very understandable, so I think these should be largely mitigated, and effectively she should be given a slap on the wrist. And I think, most importantly of all, she should be promised that this will not happen again because the police are going to do their job properly. But chance would be a fine thing there. Anyway, as a result of this, I'd say Epping obviously carry on protesting, but Canary Wharf as well, carry on protesting. Do not get violent. Do not assault anyone. Keep the pressure up on the protests, because at the end of the day, we've seen it work in Epping. I don't see why it can't work elsewhere. Right, with that, I think I will leave it there. Next Tuesday, it's Tosh News. Next Thursday, it's more Hollow Knight. And next Saturday, it's Laughing at the Guardian. If you enjoy what I do, please do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Great ways to help me out with the algorithm. And of course, please do become a channel member or leave super chats and super thanks if you so wish. Right, with that, that's everything I had for you for today. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.